Yeah, this guy. Fablehaven movie. You know, it's almost happened a couple times. Fablehaven almost got made into a movie by a guy named Avi Arad, the guy that produced Spider-Man or X-Men or Iron Man. He tried to turn it into a movie, but he just didn't get the job done. Most recently, we worked with John Stevenson, who's the guy that directed Kung Fu Panda. He tried to turn Fablehaven into a movie. A studio called New Regency tried to turn Candy Shop War into a movie. So a lot of my projects have almost become movies, but almost is the key word there. I've been paid decent money, they've been trying, but so far nothing has worked out. So sooner or later I expect, it's been pretty constant interest, sooner or later I expect someone will get the job done. This guy. Yeah. I started getting serious about it in high school, probably. I mean, I liked to write stories even when I was a kid, but in high school I started to go, maybe this is something I could really get good at, and got serious about it. And I practiced with short fiction. My theory was if I could learn to write a good scene, I could eventually learn to write a good novel, which is a chain of scenes. So I practiced by writing short stories. You know, and so basically I wrote a bunch of terrible short stories instead of a terrible novel. You know. And little by little, I got better at it the more I practiced. Yeah. Okay. What we got? This guy. Yeah. Oh, sorry. That guy in the neck. To you first.
Did you get the concept for the series?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you a little bit. I can't tell you too much about a lot of them, right? Because I got to keep some of this stuff under my hat. So the idea is just to get out there before I write it. You know what I mean? But my next series will probably be called Outskirts. It'll probably involve somebody getting kidnapped into another world, and it will probably the field will be somewhere in between Fablehaven and Beyonders. I told you Beyonders is more like heroic. Fablehaven, it's got big adventure, but it's a little more warm and fun, right? Some of the relationships and the silly characters like Rascals, the Sailors, it brings some kind of humor into it. I want that new series to be in between those two. Make it a little more lively and fun, because Beyonders felt so serious. You know, Beyonders feels, you'll see it kind of ends all epic with battles and wars, which is cool, and I still try to have some fun in Beyonders, but it's not as light and warm as Fablehaven. Sure.
Are you going to release a third Candy Shop War in that series?
It is possible. I think maybe it might be hardwired into my DNA to do that, so it could happen. Make it a tradition. Okay, well, I'm glad to have your vote on that, because I do have a theory maybe for the third book. Okay, in the orange. My favorite book I've written. That's always kind of hard to say. Probably if I had to think my personal favorite book that would geek me out the most, it would be the third Beyonders. I love heroic sacrifice. We see these broken heroes do some cool heroic sacrifices in book 3. People die in cool ways, basically. And not everybody dies. I mean, everyone you like dies. I'm just kidding. But there are some people you like who die. But I think they don't just like get killed. They kind of almost give their lives. They die in these heroic ways. And I think there's a difference there that to me as a reader, I think people will like it. I think people will go, oh, that was really cool. And, you know, they might even like tear up a little bit. They'll think it's cool. I hope. But I like all my stuff for different reasons. Candy Shop War is really fun. Fablehaven is the relationships in Fablehaven are some of my best relationships. The relationships between Kendra and Seth, between the kids and their grandparents, those are some really good relationships that feel pretty good. I think readers can connect to. Yeah. Yeah.
What grade would you say the book you've written are best?
Yeah, usually Fablehaven or Candy Shop War, kids start reading that in 4th or 5th, right? And then, but then it gets read up through high school, adults. I mean, when I do signings, I'll often get teenagers and adults and, you know, lots of people. The kind of people who would read Harry Potter for fun would read my book. So that sometimes it could be an 80-year-old sometimes, if it's that kind of an 80-year-old, you know, who likes a fun fantasy. Beyonders, I'd say, feels a little older, maybe 5th, 6th grade. You know, is more when kids would start reading Beyonders. But if you're a good reader, you know, self-select. If you're a really good reader and you can read a big fat adventure book, then you're probably okay. This guy. It could become a movie. We haven't officially really put it out there yet. I think we'll probably officially put it out there once that third book's out. And then people can see what the whole series is. Movie makers can decide if they want to get involved. Yes?
What advice would you have for a young person
Yeah. Advice for the young writer. A couple things. One of the big things is pay attention to how your favorite authors build their scenes. Focus on building good scenes. When you write a novel, when I say a scene, I mean when you're there real time with the character. When you're seeing what they see, you know, you're hearing what they say to each other, you're hearing the conversations, you're there in a moment with the character, right? Then you get to the end of that scene and there's like either a page break, you know, like a little gap, and then you jump into a new scene, like further ahead in the story or from a different point of view. Or at the end of the chapter, you jump into a new scene with a new character. Pay attention to how your favorite authors start their scenes, what level of description they use, how they handle the dialogue or conversations within the scene, how they work in backstory to the scenes. They don't have to show all the boring parts. That's a really important part of it. As you learn to develop your own scenes, take your idea you have and break it down into scenes and dramatize those scenes, bring them to life. Pay attention to how your favorite writers do it and then practice doing it yourself, and over time you will get better at it. The guts of getting good at writing are reading a lot, and getting feedback from smart people who enjoy the category you're writing in, right? If you get a master's in creative writing, you will read a lot, write a lot, and get feedback from smart people. This is what we do as writers, right? That's how you get better, and you just keep doing that and you get better over time. You're looking for interesting characters facing interesting trouble. That's the heart of a good story, okay? That's like the download of some of the basic core things that you should be thinking about and working on. Yes? How many books do I make? I've made 5 Fable Havens, 2 Beyonders books that are out. 1 is written, but not out. 1 Candy Shop Horror book that is out. 1 that is not out, but it's mostly written, the most. And a picture book called Pingo. So, Pingo, 5 Fable Havens, 2 Beyonders, like 9 that are officially out. 2 more coming, 3 more coming, something like that. Dan,
since you just mentioned the interesting characters facing interesting trouble, what would you say is the most interesting trouble you've ever made your characters face?
Interesting trouble in my book. That's a good question. Sometimes I'll develop a creature around trouble. I know like one piece of trouble that I thought was fun in Fablehaven was we've got this creature called Olak the Glutton. Olak the Glutton is a frog where if you feed the frog, it will spend the rest of its life eating and growing until it eats you. And to me that was interesting trouble. That was like something a little bit different than what I normally see. And our character had to figure out, what am I going to do with this thing? You know, it just keeps eating and eating and eating, and you know, it's not always on camera. You know, sometimes it's far away from where our character is, but he always knows it's out there eating and growing and eating and growing, and eventually it'll eat him. I like that. You know what I mean? Like I like that kind of thing. Also, sometimes relationship things can be interesting. Like I like that in Fablehaven. Kendra's learning to be more careful. Kendra is a careful person, learning to take risks. At the same time, Seth is a daring person, learning to be careful, and that causes lots of little conflicts between them that are entertaining to me. Things like, you know, so sometimes the trouble's little, sometimes the trouble's big. I don't know. What else was cool? Like the trouble was the source of the Beyonders premise. Was, you know, how would an emperor go about destroying the heroes in the world? Like not just killing them, but by making people give up on them. And to me, that was an interesting trouble of how do you become a hero in a world that's given up on heroes. I like that trouble because I think it reflects sometimes how our society can feel or be, where we kind of question people's motives. We wonder, you know, who are the true heroes among us? You know, are there any actors or athletes or politicians who are heroes anymore? You know, and you sort of ask that question, and you go, oh, maybe, we don't know, you know. And so, like, yeah, how do you be a hero in a world that's cynical about heroes? To me, that's interesting trouble, and interesting to kind of explore. Not that you ever explore it perfectly, but you know, try to at least have some interesting ideas about it. Okay, if your hand is up, you are our last questions. So make sure your hand is up if you want to be among the last questions. Okay, remember who you are. Remember who you are, and we'll start over here. Like for Fablehaven? Oh, if I was going to make up something no one's seen? Because in Fablehaven, I used lots of creatures we'd heard of. And I almost, by the end of it, I'd used almost everything I could think of. Leprechauns, unicorns. I mean, I worked almost everything into it before the series was over, including making up a few things. I usually, when I make up creatures, I center it around giving them abilities that are unfamiliar rather than like, you can make up a creature like, he's an emu man, you know, half emu, half man. And to me that sounds less cool than just thinking of a character that's kind of got a different like the seed guys. You know, it's just, it makes it very human. You know, they're human-ish, except they've got the seed thing, lets them be reborn. And how does that one little detail change how they would function as a society and as people? And so it would be stuff like that. It would be tweaking what we know, not making something that we don't, that's so totally foreign to us. It would be creating races that have different abilities than races we've seen before, and seeing how that would affect the story. Okay? So I'm sorry, I didn't get super specific with it, but that's the kind of thinking that would go into creating new stuff. Okay? Yeah. Yes. Writers, we're observers, and we often take stuff from people we know. I'm kind of like Dr. Frankenstein. I'll take attributes of people I know and create my own new being, my own new person. And so, like the character Seth in Fablehaven has a lot of attributes in common with my brother Bryson. They're both boneheads in kind of the same way. Recklessly curious kids, basically. You know, recklessly curious people. If you leave Seth alone in a room with a beehive, you'd come back and you'd be wearing the beehive. He's that kind of kid. Or like he'll make the same mistake 10 different ways and never learn from it. You know, my brother was just like that in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, Seth isn't exactly my brother too. So I took that attribute of his personality for Seth, right? That kind of thing. The character Nate in Fablehaven is the character most like me. The character Nate in Candy Shuffle is the character most like me. The character Summer in Candy Shuffle is the character most like my sister. Seth in Fablehaven is the character that's most like my brother. My relationship with my grandparents has a lot to do with the relationship with their grandparents. So there's things I'll take from my life to try to help some of the characters feel honest and real. Yeah. Yeah. I've got some premises that would probably only work with adult named characters, and that's what really differentiates, you know, the adult books from the kid book. It's the mind of the main character. If we're in an adult's mind, it's an adult book. For a kid's mind, it's technically a kid book. But the catch to that is I am trying to write in a kid's mind, but write it smart, write it for an adult. You know what I mean? So to a degree, I'm like, I'm trying to write a book an adult would like. You know what I mean? Like even though it is kid friendly, I try to write my adult characters like they're adults. And we see it through the point of view of the kid. You know, but that usually you can find adult characters that you go, okay, I get who this guy is, and an adult can probably get that person in a way differently than how a kid would get that person, right? But I do have a couple of ideas that would only work with aging my adult main characters older. The next series I write will not be that series, but the series after that might. We'll at least have to age them more into YA territory, where they're older teens or maybe even adults. For the story I have in mind, that's all. Yes. That is that book. Olaf the Glutton is that fraud. That thing on the cover. Okay, who else had their hands up for those last question things? Yes. Did I like it when I was writing the book? That's a great question. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes to me, it's most of the time it's pretty fun. I mean, that's why I write. To me, it's kind of like doing my hobby as my day job. I really enjoy it. Sometimes when there's a deadline, it's a headache. You know, there's like, I'm working 14-hour days. I check into a hotel and work 14-hour days for a week, say bye to my kids, you know, because I'm behind deadline. So sometimes it's like, you know, when it's like that, it takes some of the joy out of it. It's definitely not like, if you think the writer's life is, you know, I'm in my hammock down in the Florida Keys. When I'm in the mood, I'll roll out of the hammock, maybe type something, you know. That's not what it, you know, it's a pretty busy job. I mean, I work at least 8 hours a day, at least. Usually when I'm writing, it's a lot more than that. When I'm touring, it's like just nonstop. But the good thing, I love sharing the stories, and I love making up the stories. That side of it is fun to me. Really, really fun. So I do have a lot of fun with this job. Okay, there's a few more hands I know. Are you the last hand? You're the last hand. Tell us the last question. Make it so wise, mighty and powerful.